So, welcome everyone to the fourth episode of the Catributor podcast. Today with our guest TCFreer. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm me. I don't know what else you want me to say. Hello,
Just
I'm me.
a bit about what you do, who you are.
Okay, well, yeah, I like Asim, like Pointy, I stream Warships. We're all part of the CC program for Warships ourselves. I'm a big data and nerdy geek when it comes to all spreadsheets and stuff like that for the game. So I spend a bit of time digging around in the back end and understanding that sort of stuff. I do everything on a family-friendly, chilled-out, fun basis, and there you go. That's it. I am what I am. I am who I am. I am what you see.
Okay. Okay, then I guess we will start with our first topic, the patch that has hit yesterday, that has finally brought the full German destroyer line. So, what do you guys think about
some
the
webcam
LB?
issues, by the way.
It's okay, you have a nice picture there.
Yeah, frozen with my cup of tea.
Cheers. Yeah, cheers. I mean, obviously, we've had them in testing under NDA for quite a while, and now they've finally gone live. I don't mind them, and they take a bit of getting used to. They are, for want of a better word, they are cruisers without citadels in some cases. You don't play them like your normal destroyers, do you?
Oh yeah, it's like they can't. That's my personal playstyles. I don't like them very much because I feel like the normal destroyer duties are just something you can't really do. Like you can't do much spotting or camping. You aren't even that good at supporting other destroyers because you're mostly about armor piercing, and it doesn't work so well against DDs because you get a lot of overpens. So they're a bit of a weird position, I feel like, because they're more like a cruiser, but they take a destroyer slot.
Yeah.
It's always we're getting more destroyers like that where it's awkward if you're in that position of being in one of these new German destroyers or a French gunboat or something like that doesn't really have that's not a particularly good cap contesting ship, not particularly good ship for getting in close and dealing with other destroyers. And sometimes you end up having to do those things anyway. I think the new German destroyers aren't so bad for that. It's more around the firepower than their actual concealment, because their concealment is, I think, largely okay.
LB has
not great.
6.4, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, it does depend on your build, doesn't it? If you go more for gun based and ignore the concealment and stuff like that, it's not brilliant. I mean, it's only slightly better than a full concealment Mino and Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're okay. They're okay once you get to know them. If you're a diehard DD player, they're not going to be your cup of tea.
They're definitely quite a niche line, I think.
It feels like that's what they're kind of bringing in a lot of, though, with a lot of the stuff that we've seen come in recently. It all seems to be kind of its own little niche, rather than it being, this is this line and this is similar to this line that's already in there, and this is just the nation's view of it.
Yeah, I guess in a sense they're getting a bit more creative with like the smoke screen on the battleships and the destroyers that are just a bit weird, and the Dutch cruisers that are upcoming with the airstrike or so on. I mean, I'm not necessarily agreeing with all of their ideas that they're making, but I guess they're trying new things, probably because they don't just want another line that's just a copy of what's already there.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, in a way, it's good that they're still willing to try new things. But it does result in sometimes some strange and interesting concepts being applied to the game.
It's
I mean, the problem, of course, is if you have too many concepts in one slot, because they're just like destroyers, cruisers, battleships, and carriers, right? If you have too many different kinds of destroyers, you don't necessarily have something that you need to get a cap, right? Because the slot's taken by, if it's taken by too many gunboats, then your team might be at a disadvantage. So there's obviously a downside if you spread too much from the norm and they still occupy the same slot.
I mean, on the other hand, though, it's a case of what is really out there. What ships have they got in terms of is it a real ship? Is it a design ship? Is it? I mean, take the most recent editions, the Easter and Tony. On one hand, yes, genuine historic ships took part in World War II, took part in operations, etc. But why did they feel the need to tweak the actual design to make it fit with the game? What was so wrong with it? Why not just put them in as, why not just, put the correct planes and stuff like that? People are starting to nitpick at little things like that. But it's I mean, put it in the frame of mind, the time of the thing. There's a lot of stuff obviously going on, and there's a lot of design concepts and design thoughts being put forward and put out there to be out there. And as many we've only got to look at like the Tillman design stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's loads of bonkers ideas like that are out there of you can see like a doctrine change almost between, like, for the US Navy, going from all or nothing big heavy hitting lumbering things to pretty fast, pretty mobile ship designs with powerful guns but barely enough armor, as he decided it was just enough to get by. It's it's nice to see that, but at the same time, it'd be nice to be able to bring it back in. So that's kind of like the history buff geeky part that I quite digging into, as to how real is it.
I mean, it feels weird to just invent planes when there are perfectly reasonable historical planes that you can put on them, because it feels like, I mean, I understand if you tweak for gameplay purposes, World of Warships is not a realistic game, so obviously you're going to tweak a lot of stuff for gameplay purposes, but you could just easily like have the actual planes there, right? And you can still modify some stats a bit, because it's not like the ships have all of their historical stats, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you can't put a ship in historically accurately with, based on we're going to put it in as ship X, because it has to match and it has to follow program. But again, the kind of appeal the game's got, isn't it? There's you've got those that are there for the competitive side, those that are there for the fun side, those that are there for the historical accuracy. Because I mean, there's stuff in this that you just won't see naturally anywhere. So it's not just balancing the game, but it's balancing what the community's expectations are, and one will never agree with the other.
Oh yeah. Now, speaking of like weird designs, have you played Grand Battles? What are your thoughts on Grand Battles?
It's an interesting concept. It kind of entails the age-old question, doesn't it, that a lot of people have got, of the what would have happened if the German Navy had built up more, if World War II had carried on past 45.
Mm-hmm.
If Japan had carried on with A510, where would we have ended up? So it's a nice, interesting what if. Interestingly, obviously, Satsuma and Hanover. Satsuma is obviously based on A510, like Shikishima is, and I mean, there's no official paperwork because the Japanese were so paranoid at anybody finding anything out about A510 that the only reference to her, I think, is in one or two books. Anything else, design, paperwork, anything like that, was all destroyed and removed.
Yeah, they burned a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah, they got rid of so much because they just didn't want it to be out. And the same with H43 in Hanover. Loads and loads of actual just paper on a back of a scratch card there. So it's actually a nice. This is one of the benefits that the game has, though, isn't it? You can have these what if scenarios and just get an idea of what would have happened. So I'm actually quite enjoying it. It's a bit woolly the way they've put it in that you've got to play tier 9s and 10s to grind out the. We have to say it in air quotes, I'm afraid, because it's intelligence. To actually be able to grind out to be able to play them. But on the same thing, I suppose it is a nice limiting factor because otherwise, we know what everybody out there will be like. Everybody will be going, I'm going to take the Satsuma, I'm going to take the Hanover. And it would just be teams of Hanover, teams of Satsuma.
You have to have something in place to get people to play other ships.
Absolutely.
That kind of test mode.
Yes.
Although they don't have anything in place to properly play them, right? You just have to be in the battle. And also to me, it feels like, I played it yesterday when it was just released. It felt like that basically nobody wants to play cruisers because cruisers obviously don't want to face super battleships. Regular battleships are just scary enough for them. So it's mostly just destroyers trying to farm battleships and then the battleships themselves.
It's a great hunting ground if you're in a Shimmer or a Shimmer or a Somers. It's a lot of fun then.
To me, the whole thing does just feel like a test mode for the new, what do we want to call them? Auto consumables? Special abilities? The things that automatically trigger, which are different for each ship.
That's one aspect I'm not happy with.
Yeah.
Because, part of the enjoyment for me of the game is managing your consumables. And, never at any point as a ship had anything vaguely similar attached to it, whereby suddenly you get an unrealistic boost. I know it's an arcade game, but at least keep some modicum of sensibility. No, at no point was there ever suddenly ability where the mega efficient German loaders suddenly found an extra wind or, had a kind of Red Bull and went even quicker. It just doesn't. It's just, yes.
It's also the fact that they automatically trigger, especially for the secondaries. I feel like for the main guns in the Satsuma, it's easier to get use out of the buff if it triggers. But for the secondary, you won't stop shooting your main guns just because otherwise you trigger a buff that's not useful, right? So then their buff triggers and you're like, hey, there's nothing in secondary range, right? So the buff runs its course and you don't even get the benefit of it because you can't trigger it deliberately in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bit of an odd concept, really. It almost feels like with CVs where it's like, oh well, we don't trust the players to use these things, so we'll just take it out of their hands. Don't want to give them too much to concentrate at the same time, the poor dears.
It's on one hand it's dumbing down. I know it sounds harsh, and I'm so sorry because it sounds that way, but it is. It's the dumbing down of the game. It's like, no, just leave it. It's fine. It's not broken. It's a nice, learning to manage. They had, you've got the same problems no matter what. Don't mess with it. It ain't broke. Don't need fixing.
But another thought, right? What do you guys would think about a consumable that you can deliberately trigger and that needs charging by you doing something? It doesn't need to be hitting with the main guns, but you could take the whole idea further. You could have other consumables that if you do a certain thing or you could charge it up and then it's just ready for you to use.
It would make more sense that having the same mechanic for, building up the ability to use it and then actually being able to use it as needed instead of it just pinging off randomly at times when it's completely useless.
Why not make it part of you? Why not make it based on? Off the top of my head, radar and hydro. have them as something that you would that requires charging to use, because I mean that kind of fits in with that era. It's not always 100% available. You have to make it's there you go. Suddenly you've got we know it's got cooldown and it's got a set duration, etc. But it's got to be charged up to use it rather than being able to use it from straight away.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you could do a lot of interesting. I mean, you could also have something like a delayed use or something like a charge. Like, for example, if you press Raider, that it doesn't immediately activate, that needs to charge up. So you press the Raider button, and then it activates like 15 seconds later or so. When you already have that other ships than the main Raider ship have a delayed vision on whatever is. But you could, like, for example, Raider can get out of hand, but you could play with consumables like that it's not immediately available, that you have to plan ahead a little bit or things like that.
The other option as well, though, is obviously make the radar so it doesn't reach out to its full range straight away. I mean, if you put it in terms of, okay, yes, arcadey, but how would it have applied? How would it have applied at the time? Is that you might be able, they might have had 10 kilometers radar range, but they would only be able to reliably say, well, 5k away, that's a destroyer or that's a battleship. And as he spends more time, it's like, actually 8k away, there's that. That is another option they've got that's available to it. Leave it so it's got the same turn duration, but as it goes over time, the ability to see further with it improves.
Mm-hmm.
But there's options available with it. It's just as long as it's not you've hit this marker, congratulations, suddenly you've got 1,000 hit point heal. Oh, sorry, that's Kutsyov when you die, isn't it?
Yeah, that's still a little bit of it still leaves a little bit of a sting that there's exactly one special captain with a skill like that. While the others might have to achieve a Kraken or so.
Yeah. Literally anybody who doesn't have Kutsyov, the Kutsyov captain, it's the biggest, most broken thing I think in the game out there. It literally is a captain that gives you the opportunity that, oh look, I'm down to 9% and ta-da, I'm healing. You can't do any more damage to me while I'm healing. You're only doing a couple of hundred in your little destroyer. Blap, you're dead. Bye. I'm moving on now because I don't die. It's just bonkers.
Yeah, so what else have we got in the latest patch? I mean, I think community tokens, which we covered the last time. So there is now a new resource, which I think you can even get like ship crates or so with those tokens, right? You can get them by official Twitch streams and like.
Yeah, there's various ways. Test servers are a big one.
Yeah. I quite like it.
Recruitment. Yeah, it's a good show, especially with being able to get some of the community made camos, which you might have missed out on previously. Some of them which I don't have. So
yeah, I need to get the I need to rebuy my New York and get that pirate one for it. Quite cool. But no, I think it's quite nice as well because it's kind of it's nice to see a unified consumer, a unified value of such that if I'm watching ATOM's podcast and stuff like that, I'm watching Pointy or I'm watching me or I'm watching the main channel or anything like that, earning something that I can get a tangible result for, and then when I'm playing with my friends I get the same thing, and hopefully now we might see more tangible data coming out of the test server as well for them to actually do work on with the games. Because now you've got a proper reward for it. They've just got the one thing that worries me, and it's worried me. It's something that's been grinding my head since the Puerto Rico,
and
that's how much pressure potentially you put on an individual player. Because take the Commander skill rework at the start of the year. Yeah, that did go through the test server unbelievably, but it went through the test server at the same time as everyone was doing Dockyard. Everyone was doing the Christmas crates. Everyone was doing, a whole heap of other things. And it's kind of like, on top of that, oh, by the way, as well, we need a couple of thousand games from you on the test server as well while you're at it. And it's like, okay, so there's our 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, where's that magical 26th hour and stuff like that? You've got to be careful of overloading people and giving them too much to actually accomplish. And it's then a question of, well, what do I not want to do? And that's something I think they need to learn. They need to take on board and learn that, a player only has a finite amount of time. Some of us work, some of us have got an 8-hour job plus a couple of hours of family time. Then on top of that, we've got our personal gaming time. And you've got to somehow manage to balance all of that together. That's where that's where I think they need to consider it's I mean, we saw Kingpin do nearly 400 hours of gameplay to get his PR for free. And that's an unhealthy amount of gameplay. We should hold our hands up that there are some of us who stream who do an unhealthy amount of time streaming because of how long we spend. But again, you're balancing that out. It's their job, it's their employment, it's their form of income. But it's still the balance that the average player, can they spend the time on the test server so that you get meaningful data back to base game changes on, coupled with the argument that's always existed that, well, I've got all this to do on my live server account that I've got to complete, and you want me to do this on the test server, and I don't get the reward for doing the test server. Now you can earn that 4.5k for the test server, which you can then get tangible results for on the live server. It's just making sure that what they've got to do on the live server balances what you've got to do on the test server, I think.
It would be. I mean, I hadn't even really thought about it in those terms, but yeah, just getting more people on the test server can't hurt in terms of bringing actual useful data back to Wargaming, considering that that's so much of what they rely on.
In the spirit of the grand battles and the what if scenario, what would have happened with the Commander skill rework if more people had played on the test server? Would we have had the Deadeye debacle?
I'm afraid we would still have had it because they were so adamant, even with all. I mean, okay, they respect probably data that they get more than feedback in that sense, but there was so much pushback on it. And I feel like this was something that was not really that hard to figure out that it would go wrong.
Great. It was something that we all pointed out as well. And obviously, we can give a gut reaction of straight away, hang on, you're bonusing something, you're not taking anything away from it. You've got ships that are sat at range that already have reasonable accuracy, or ships that are sat at range that shouldn't have reasonable accuracy, but because of reasons, I do have. So it's kind of obvious that it's going to influence it that way, but you back it up with actual physical proof based from the test server. That's what happens, because let's be fair, 90% of the time when people actually go on the test server, they're not actually testing the new mechanics or the new game order or anything like that. They're going on there because it's the easiest way for them to say, well, I've nearly got that tier 10, what does it play like? And that's what 90% of the people go and do. Let's not skin the bone. That is basically what they do. I mean, we're lucky, us three sat here. We've got press accounts from Wargaming, and if you don't have a tier 10 yet, we can go on our press accounts and we can test the line and see, and get a feel for it. Not everybody has that access except when the test server's live, and then they do have the access and ability to do that. So it's
it's hard to get good data.
I know that because of I've got my version of the Wargaming spreadsheet that everyone we all say that they all praise the mighty spreadsheet. I've built it. I've got a version of it. I can see, I've spent the time and I've built it. I've gone through the full battle performance stuff. If you did you go to the summit? I know I only just started when a couple shortly after that. Did you go Pointy?
No.
Do you remember the video from? Did you see the video afterwards of it, where they talked about how they measure the metrics of the ships?
I probably watched it at the time, but
So when they,
it's been a while.
Sorry, this is the data geek in me. Unbelievably, outside of streaming, outside of wargaming, I'm a proper Excel data nerd and all that sort of stuff. I do that as a job, and so I spend a lot of time having a stupid amount of fun with all the publicly available API data that we can get, and it's one of the things they mentioned on that, and it's stuck with me for ages because it's like, well, how can you quantify it? And I've been asking the question myself, so I'm like, how do I quantify it? Because they talked about how they balance the ships based on something called battle performance.
Mm-hmm.
So the battle performance is based on the tank damage, the spot damage, the hit ratio, the defend and capture points, the average and the damage, and it might include ships and planes shot down, so kill to death and stuff like that. But it's not based on min-max. It's based on the average. So out of 20, 30, 40, 50,000 players, for example, playing a ship over a week, they'll say, right, the average for that the average for that ship, for that player, for that ship is 80,000 damage. And then they apply that and say, right, how is that compared to its tier 10 brethren or its, battleships and everything like that? And yeah, that's my little fun. That's what I do for fun for the game to try and figure out. So everyone's sitting around going, "Oh my god, the FDR is so overpowered." Is it really? Can I quantify it based on numbers? And interestingly enough, you can actually quantify it with numbers. But again, there's other things that come into play. These other things that you have to bear in mind when you're talking about, is a ship overpowered, is a ship underpowered? And it's, again, then you've got to start taking into consideration the player base. You've got to start taking into consideration the type of player who's got it. So, for example, we mentioned FDR. FDR is 33,000 steel. I've only just got enough. I've only just got 38k of steel thanks to doing some murking for clan wars. I can now look finally with coupon in hand. What do I want to buy? But you've got to get to that point to be able to afford that ship. So you're going to be spending a lot more time in maybe competitives and things like that. With the player of the game, it's slightly different to random. Those that have got it early, slightly more advanced than the average player. It's harsh to say, and I do apologise, but then again, I'm a doofus myself, and I've only just got there. So you've got to bear all that stuff in mind. But it's an amazing amount of fun, and I toot of the own horn. I do put the spreadsheets together every single week, and I put it out there for everybody, and you can literally see from the start of the year to today what's done. And it's been fun to look at everybody's favourite burning effigy of the Thunderer. From the start of the year to today, you can actually realistically see on the graph. Oh look, there's Deadeye, and then it drops off because everyone got used to it, and then it drops again because oh look, there's no Deadeye, and then it carries on going down because it's had its range nerfed, and you can also then see the correspondence of that because then it's carrying on, and its damage goes down. But oh look, its tank damage goes up, and its spotted damage goes up because oh look, you've got to bring your battleship closer to actually make it work. And it's really good to actually be able to show that and let people see it. But also then you can turn around and say, right, so Julio Cesar, how broken is she? Well, there you go. there's the graph that tells you. But yeah, so no, it's sorry.
No, that was really interesting.
I love building that sheet. It needs more finicking. The next thing the next couple of iterations we're working on for it is where you can literally just pick the tier and the class, and it just brings back all of the individuals, all the ships that refers to. So tier 10 battleships, tier 10 carriers, and then you can see them graphically as well against all the different metrics. And in answer to Zfel's question, yes, they're all public on the Bob's Discord. You can download them. They're all there. If anybody wants to grab them and share them on the Discords as well, they're there for everyone to just grab and use. I don't mind. We put the time and effort in. There'll be C servers, there'll be NA server versions, there'll be PvE versions as well, and ranked versions as well when I finish putting them together. So, sorry, geeky fun.
No problem.
Oh,
I mean,
it's always it's good. Somebody somewhere is doing it. It's like what Little White Mouse does, like the amount of effort she puts in to pull out numbers and sometimes even point out mistakes in things that Wargaming have missed themselves, like with turning circle radii and stuff like that.
Yeah, Little White Mouse is an absolute gem with what she does. She deserves so much more credit for what she actually achieves because it's absolutely awesome. I'll tell you what, here you go. People may not be able to see this, so I do apologise, but hopefully it fits the screen. There you go. You might not be able to see it because it's quite small, but this is just kind of a loose version. So we were just talking about our favourite tier 10 battleship. Where is she? Have I gone past it? I'm not. I might have gone past it. Where is she? It's always Conqueror, Audacious, Plymouth, Thunderer. There you go. And then you change it to have a look at your damage. So there you go. It's constantly going down because it was reasonable with that. Deadeye raised it, then they took it out and it dropped. Then they shortened its range and it dropped. And it's still going down. It's like you can see it's 10.4% variation between the highest damage that it was achieving to the lowest damage it's now achieving, which is all that. And you can just go through all the different metrics that you see there and watch how the ship actually changes from the start of the year to now. So Thunderer started strong and he's just getting weaker and weaker and weaker. Hooray for all of us who play ships that don't like HE. But yeah, there you go. That's just that's my idea of fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's also pretty useful. And I trust your data probably more than... Not that Wargaming really publishes this, that they say a lot that they did this because of data, because of the spreadsheets, but they never really show the spreadsheets. Like when they make a post or something, they never go into the detail or tell you look, we adjusted this because of this data, right?
So I have a big bugbear with Wargaming and the way they interpret their data. And this is on a professional level, I'm afraid. Because you guys know I love operations. So does a lot of people in Bob's love operations. A lot of people I speak to love operations. However, in Wargaming's infinite wisdom, there's not enough people playing them, so we're not going to do anything with them. And they've gone about 20% into the fact there, because obviously for a business perspective, there's your player base. There's everyone who plays random. There's everyone who plays ranked. And then right at the bottom, you've got this little wee pile of 10 or 15% of the player base that plays operations. But they don't then take the question forward as to, right, so why? We spent X million dollars developing, with not just, we say million. You've got to bear in mind, it's the resource, it's the time to actually put the effort and the code and everything in. There's all that time and money and effort that's been spent creating them. And if there's only 10 or 15% of the player base playing it now, how many were playing it before to how many are playing it now? And there's always the case. They provided some data. They provided some data which I think I'm going to be able to recreate when I get the PvP data in. And every time there's a new operation with new rewards, the line goes up. because, oh look, there's new rewards, I'll play them. And it's almost like there's a disconnect. Here's player base, give us refresh the rewards. We want, why do people keep going back and playing ranks? Because the rewards refresh. It's it's as simple. There's the question. There's that, and look what you're doing to create it. Why don't you just do the same for ops? Because lo and behold, more and more people will start to play. The curve will change and go up. More people will play because it changes. They constantly want to play. We know because we're testing them and everybody's getting involved. Submarines. They want to bring them into the game. Brilliant. Okay, fine. They were an aspect in World War II. They had a big influence on a lot of stuff that happened. If you want to bring them in, that's fine. But guess what? Putting them in with randoms at the minute, brutal honesty, I don't think it's going to fit and work. It's going to be. It's another mechanic for the player base to juggle, and if they don't think that a player can manage simply pressing an R or a T key for, I have to put a fire out on my ship, then why bring in a class that's harder to spot than everything else they've ever done before? But hey, there's this perfect game mode that you've installed that's PvE, where you could actually have it where you've got to either defend or attack, say, a convoy like they mentioned, and, suddenly look at that. It's ready-made, it's there. All you got to do is just spend a bit of time, come up with some events and things like that, and your 10 or 15% that play it regularly suddenly swells to 20, 30, maybe even 50% because hey, it's something new, it's something different. We all get triggered by randoms when player A doesn't do what player B wants, and suddenly it's chat, and it all turns salty and horrible. Give them an opportunity to do something else.
I actually kind of. What you were saying there about it feeling like submarines don't fit in randoms. This is all sort of thing that's on our topic list as well, so we can kind of segue into that a bit. But
sorry,
no, it's fine. Back in one of the previous rounds of testing, I've checked just now. It was November of 2018. I put up a video about the then iteration of subs that were being tested, and my feeling then was that it didn't fit for random battles, but hey, it'd be perfect for the kind of operations where they were first tested, the Halloween mode that they did.
Yes.
And going up to the very latest iteration that we've been playing, my feeling has absolutely not changed at all. I just don't see them fitting into the current ecosystem without being disruptive in a bad way.
Yeah.
And I mean, the operations topic, right? You remember when they nerfed Nare because too many people were playing it from their perspective because the rewards were too good? They even had basically data that it's if there were better rewards, more people would play operations, right? And with the subs, they could revitalize operations a lot, could have an entire interesting new game mode, right? And there's so much potential there, and then they wouldn't potentially ruin the random battles. And I mean, you can monetize operations pretty easily. So it's not like they need to put them in random battles to sell submarines or anything, right? Or sell premiums or whatnot.
Well, I mean, in answer to that, we did a really rough and ready, and because it's such a small group, it's almost, it doesn't matter. But we are dealing with 10 or 15% of the player base, so actually, once you extrapolate, it's probably not far off. Simple question. How many players bought a Warspite or a PER or a London or, yes, we'll swear, a Makarov or a Molotov or, a Perth and decided I'm buying it because I want to play operations in it because it's premium and I'm playing operations, so it's going to be nice to grind credits or XP. How many people did that? We asked a simple group when we were playing operations, 86% of people out of 100. So 86 people said, yeah, that's why I got it. So in answer to they can't monetize it, they don't need to. It does itself. And yeah, Z-Files, it's 10 to 15% of the player base plays operations consistently, fluctuating between 10 and 15.
And it's not like people aren't also using their camo consumables and signal consumables as well.
I mean, we all remember the good days of Narai. You go in your Meritus service with all your credit flags on, in your pay fast, and you'd walk away with 1 to 1.2 million credits, and you'd smile all the way. And it was so. And the beauty of it is, it's so relaxed. You know, there's no stress at all.
Mhm.
You just crack on, and yeah.
I mean, another part about the operations that I don't think I have heard raised is, right? You need specific ships for an operation, which means not everybody in the player base will actually have potentially the ships to go into an operation, or maybe ships they like, right? Because you're so limited, it will obviously also there will be less players. If there were, for example, more operations, or if there were more options for ships, that could also increase, right?
Yes. We have been known to do stupid things in Bobs, though. So, yeah, we're not the best example. But yes, technically there is just like Clan Wars, just like, you know, any of the team-based competitors, there is the cookie cutter sweet spot of X, Y, and Z to create the perfect output.
Yeah, but it's not just about the cookie cut. I mean, it's like the ship's actually limited for tier, right? Or in some operations, it was like you need from this nation, right? So it's more limited than it's not just about cookie cutter. It's also that if you don't have like a tier 6 or 5 ship or so, you might not be able to play this operation.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, operations at the minute are 6s and 7s, and mostly, yeah, you're looking at your usual suspects. So, you know, your Warspite, your Peth, your Ark Royals, your Leningrad, your Atlanta, unbelievably, it's one of the few places where the Flint range doesn't bother it. You know, even ships that you don't often see actually out in randoms. You know, Indianapolis, Abruzzi, stuff like that. You don't often see them in actual randoms, but they do really well in stuff like operations. And again, you know, one thing none of us here have touched on actually, but Sergeant Sully's actually really good point in chat, hasn't he? Where else can you play with 7 of your friends to actually get a bit of teamwork installed if you want to do competitive as well? It's, you know, you have to work together as a team, and if you want to really stress yourselves, Operation what is it? Defensive Naval Station Newport.
Yeah.
The one that's been turned up to 11. Good luck. You need good luck and get your teamwork together in that.
Also,
Well,
I feel like with a lot of the lower tiers, right? I mean, currently, if you do play lower tiers, PvP matches, they often have bots in them. It takes ages to actually get a battle. They could fill that spot with operations, right? So that you can actually level with operations align up to higher tiers.
Yeah. Well, they used to have a tier 8 one, Cherry Blossom. So
yeah, I remember that.
that
missed that
was
one. That's some interesting. The flare mechanic was a bit different.
Yeah, that was it was good fun, that.
Yeah, lower tier ops would be. I don't know. Maybe they're worried specifically it would suck everyone out of the random queue, but outside of newer players grinding up for the first time, you know, you go and play lower tiers. It is, you know, 2 or 3 actual players per team, and then the rest is just all bots anyway. So, don't like the queues there to begin with, especially.
But that's the thing, though. I don't think. I mean, yeah, we've seen how big that random queue gets. And sometimes you see, like, you know, these 20, 30, 20 or 30 ships in a queue of each class. And, you know, if we're talking about 10 or 15% of the player base currently playing it, and then suddenly, you know, you start to mix up the rewards and stuff like that, you're not going to suck all of them out, because not everybody's going to go right straight away. Ding! It's, you know, you probably see it maybe drop by what, 20, 30%. Again, you don't know until you try it. And I don't think they've ever tried it.
Yeah, for some reason, I've just given up on operations.
Quite literally.
So since we have come into this operations thing a bit with the subs, so what are your thoughts on subs? So other than that, they should be in operations, which I think we all agree on.
Well, I haven't played it too much. It's like literally a couple of games. Honestly, I'm not super impressed. The main thing I dislike is the fixed limited dive time. And
yeah, with no recharge.
yeah, it's clearly, I think they've done it with the goal of trying to force you to the surface eventually, to be stuck on the surface towards the end of a game, so that and this was a problem in previous tests. You might end up with 2 ships left that are both submarines, and it's still really hard to do. It's still really hard to fight a sub with another sub without one of the players kind of playing horrendously badly. They have to kind of let it happen. So I suspect that's why they've done it. But even with the consumable they implemented to, what is it, like pause or slow down the amount of at which you're
There's there's crew skills, isn't there, and stuff.
Yeah, if they'd even just had it so that you have to surface and ping that consumable and stay on the surface for a certain amount of time to get some dive time back, that would have been a way of at least forcing people up to the surface, and it being a limited use consumable. I can see that as being a fairer mechanic, other than because one of the other things they've done is subs on the surface now have kind of destroyer detectability ranges, which again in previous iterations they were much smaller in terms of their surface detection. So especially if there's carriers in play as well, which subs have basically no defense against other than just kind of diving. As things are at the moment, once your dive time runs out, your utility becomes severely diminished, especially as you also have the least hit points and no way of healing. So yeah, I'm not loving the current iteration.
Yeah, I look at it kind of. I agree with what you're saying, but there's also the other side of it as well, isn't there? Because there's the people who look at it and say, well, actually, how real, how close to what actually went on are they? And having a limited dive time was one of the factors of the submarines, of the U-boats at the time. They weren't the modern, big nuclear powered things with that could replenish air and replenish water from underwater. They were they had to surface to recharge and everything like that. So I think the previous version we had, where you could go underwater and you could stay down for a minute, 2, 3 minutes, and then you'd have to surface and recharge and everything. With the reduced detectability, I think that was perfectly fine. I think that worked. It worked on both levels. It wasn't a case of you surfaced, you spotted from 6K away. You were spotted from 3 or 4K away, which when you look at the amount of freeboard and the size of the subs, is perfectly acceptable. Whether you think about it from a game balance perspective, whether you look at it from a history perspective, whether you look at it from just a gameplay perspective, it fits. There's no, again, the old adage of it isn't broke, it doesn't need fixing. That one aspect of it felt pretty well okay. I mean, yeah, you could go on and say, oh well, the homing torpedoes and and the pings to actually get the torpedoes to home and all that. That's just a mechanic that you've got to bring in to actually enable that to work. So otherwise, you don't have submarines going down for 3 minutes, firing off 6 torpedoes that automatically home on the biggest magnetic thing in the water, which just happens to be you and your cruiser or your carrier or your destroyer, and there's nothing you can do about it. The reality was you'd spot them, you'd spot the cavity wake behind it a lot soon, and you might be able to, you might not be able to, and they didn't. They've restricted the damage on the carrier torpedoes, for example. Why not do the same on these? Why not make them? Why not give them that ricochet or the non-pen chance, the same as before? Because again, it doesn't make them. It doesn't make them overpowered. It doesn't make them underpowered. If anything, it makes them as they were. I mean, there was. I can't remember what the actual figure was. Somebody was saying there was of all the torpedoes fired during World War II, there's quite a high percentage didn't actually go pop. They just went ding.
I wonder how many of that is the was it the US Mark 23s?
I think it was US Mark 23s, wasn't it? Yeah, they just basically just sailed up to the edge of it and just ding ding ding, and then that was it.
Yeah.
So was it Mark 14?
All right, okay.
Mark 14 and Mark 23, they were, yeah. They basically just would, gently just cruise up to the side of the ship and just knock on it as well. They just do nothing. But I mean, again, it's stuff like that. You've got the non-penetration mechanic already in the game because, hey, it's what happens when you fire a shell and it goes bing. Everyone laughs at it and probably takes the mick out of me for it a bit, but in reality, it was doable. Turning into a torpedo to close its homing range. We do it already with the carrier torpedoes. Why not allow that to be the same with the destroyers rather than them being virtually switched on straight away? You turn in, and you close the distance quicker. It means that they can't argue. It means they can't argue. They can't, arm and do all that. Basic, the mechanics to underlie that's required are already in the game. Just needs translating across, I think.
Yeah, I feel like doing that for like all destroyers in game would probably be a lot of work because you'd have to rebalance a lot on how the torpedoes, how much damage they do, how fast they are, and so on. But I could try something new with like submarines.
I mean, I think what you were saying in chat there as well applies, is that Wargaming do at least like to take historical cues for a lot of things, but historically subs were primarily used for hitting convoys. They were very rarely used in any kind of fleet action, even though fleet submarines were a thing. So that doesn't necessarily translate well to World of Warships. Having wolf packs attack convoys at night isn't something that, like, there's no applicable scenario in World of Warships outside of an operation being made that has that specific scenario. So it kind of feels to me as though it's a bit sort of square peg into round hole. And especially, and I've seen this concern voiced since subs were first announced, that I don't think they've said anything about plans to increase team numbers. So if it's still 12v12, if you've got two of those being submarines with very low health, with only a very limited capacity to do the thing that kind of gives them the best chance of survival, i.e. actually being able to dive, and potentially being the most vulnerable class to CVs. Yeah, I mean, unless you're increasing, like, just adding slots for subs alongside other classes.
Yeah.
I don't know. It feels like it's sort of a bit doomed to fail.
Yeah, and kind of don't want it to, but what can you do?
Yeah, I also still haven't figured out what the role of a submarine is supposed to be, right? I mean, you aren't going to go for caps because if there's a destroyer in there, you just eat you, right? You aren't very good at supporting destroyers because you aren't very good against enemy destroyers. You aren't really that much of the spotters, I guess, but you can go flanking on a side and try to catch enemies. Of course, you might have a problem if you're caught out, especially with limited diving time, because it's your only defense. You aren't the fastest ship there is, even though they aren't historically slow, I suppose. But
I think
if you want to get the good
speed,
position, you need to be fast, right? If you want to do proper flanking. So it's like you are a weird thing that has no specific role that it can fill. You're just floating in there trying to, I don't know, something.
Yeah, it's a decent point, because a lot of what they've done from the start, and World of Tanks is kind of the same, is the tried to build up from a sort of rock paper scissors philosophy of, these things have this role and it counters this thing that has this role and so forth, and then you've got subs sort of coming in with a big question mark over them. What's this supposed to do exactly?
Just enjoy the scenery.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Z-Files have said, they're supposed to, what about the CVs? The CVs that camp in air quotes. A good CV player doesn't camp. A good CV player will be moving around all the time. So that kind of goes against that.
They don't have enough.
They don't have the alpha to do it, and they don't have the reload.
They certainly don't have the even with increased speeds, they don't have the sort of tactical flexibility that a destroyer with much faster speeds has, and in this iteration, the same kind of stealth on the surface anyway.
The only advantage they've got is the fact that they can get to the carrier, or get to the ships at the back without being spotted or detected. I mean, take the tier 10s that are on the test server that we're trying out at the minute. They have about 9 minutes 22 of submerged time. And, 9 minutes 22, you can comfortably cross most of the maps in 9 minutes 22 and get from your spawn into the opposition's spawn with maybe 2 or 3 minutes of dive time left. But then the question is, what do you do now when you get there? I mean, you don't want to. It puts you in a very awkward position because you can't help your team back at the spawn because you're now in the enemy spawn, and you're not going to be successfully able to kill anything in the enemy spawn. You can't surface to spot for your long-range battleships because the opposition submarine could be doing the same thing, so they'll be scattering and running and pushing forwards. I mean, on one hand, yes, okay, it means that we've gone from maybe fighting from the 110 line or the A line down to the Z line. You've now literally crushed and compacted the battle zone into maybe 6 or 7 squares in the middle of the map. But, I mean, you kind of, it just doesn't fit. Pointy.
Also, it just nobody wants to spend the first 7 minutes of the battle just sailing around to get in position, right? If it's like, you're submarine, you can go behind the enemy lines and maybe flank them or get some ships in the back line, and but the first 7 minutes of the game you're just gonna be AFK because it takes you that long to get there. That's not really exciting gameplay now, is it?
I hope you can't hear that. Doesn't look like it's activating. That's okay. Sorry, it's 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. We have a unique van that comes around, I'm afraid. Sorry.
No problem.
So what's next?
So I guess we could move on to the big elephant in the room that everyone wants to talk about. We have new carriers.
Yeah, well, not only that, we've got the rash of hybrids as well. I mean, Tone and Ise we kind of touched on before, and we've sort of known they were coming for a little bit, but we now have I don't even know how you say, is it Kearsage?
It's Smollett. Oh, the USS Kearsage.
Oh, is it that? Okay, Kearsage.
Yeah, the Kearsage, the tier 9.
Yeah.
It's the tier 8 Minnesota with 406. It's at tier 9 with a runway through the middle of it,
It's very odd looking.
which unbelievably they actually sketched out and put forward as a proposal. So everyone's like, "Oh, it's fake. It's paper, 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 paper." Yes, it's paper, but it's actually official proposed paper. It's not a thing in the air and actually, oh yes, some other nations need to have a hybrid. It actually did go through it. But yeah, nah. The big problem I don't have a problem with the hybrids. Okay, I know I'm going to be unpopular for that, and I'm sorry. My problem is that the matchmaker can't handle them, and it's a fundamental issue in the game. Yes, if you want to put the history ships in, go for it, but you've got to make sure that the bedrock is correct. And as long as they class the Tornay and the Issa as cruisers and battleships, they're always going to create potential issues whereby you're going to see, oh well, I've got 2 tier 6 carriers and I've got a triple Issei division, and then I've also got a Tornay because we down tiered, and it's like, okay, that's great. And on the other team, we've got somebody in an Ark Royal and somebody in a Furious, and then you've got no hybrids, and it's until they make that fundamental change, they're never going to fit. There's nothing wrong. I mean, there's nothing wrong historically with the ships.
Mm-hmm.
From that point, they are weak when you're in the planes, because the planes are the same kind of attack format that they're suggesting based on the dev blog that the Russian ships are going to have. And we've all seen how kind of good and bad they are. But as long as they class the Issei and as long as they class Tornay as battleship and cruiser, you're never going to get anybody on side to accept them, except as it is. They need that. They need to put that step in, and they're constantly saying, "No, we don't. We don't need to put that in. We don't need to put that in at all." And it's why everybody comes up and memes it almost that, do you actually play your own game? I mean, we know they play the game. We've seen the guys playing it. With they're talking. They do play the game, but it's almost like they just don't want to accept. And it's infuriating. I mean, I guess you guys are in the same boat as well, aren't you? It infuriates massively when you look at this. I mean, Pointy, you've been there in World of Tanks with it. I've got 70,000 games in Tanks. I've been there through with it as well. We've got the same thing now in Warships, and it's almost like, come on, learn. Just apply a little bit of grey matter and look and just think. If you made sure that Team A has 2 Issas, then Team B, by balance, should have 2 Issas. It's not rocket science.
The issue isn't even the attack damage of the planes necessarily, because it's not like the torps don't do a great deal of damage, and the spread is pretty horrendous.
Yeah.
But for one thing, there's the panic factor of, there's torp planes coming towards me, but it's the extra spotting power that a team can have with several Isseis or several Tonays.
Yeah.
That
it's the psychological aspect of gameplay.
Really, you can really shut down or harass an enemy team's destroyers, and if the other team doesn't have that same capability, then there is an imbalance, there is a mismatch there. So I think you are probably right when you say that these things could do with their own unique category in the matchmaker, so that there are an equal number of each per team.
Yeah, I mean, you don't even have to match Tone to Tone or Issa to Issa. Just needs to be, okay, Team A, 1 carrier, 2 carrier. Team B, 1 carrier, 2 carrier. Team B, Team A, 2 battleships. Team B, 2 battleships, 2 cruisers, a hybrid, destroyers. It's literally encoding language. It's X equals X, Y equals Y, Z equals Z. That's all it is. It's not the hardest thing in the world. And the argument of, the counter argument again of that is, oh, well, people wait longer in a queue. What are they going to wait longer for? To click the uninstall button because you're not listening to them and giving it and trying it? Or to actually sit and wait and enjoy your game and play the game more and thus become a more embedded player? Which one do you want? The 30 seconds to go, hate this, goodbye, uninstall, or the 45 seconds of sat in a queue? You're talking about 15 seconds and a player and a game lasting. Make your decision. It's not hard.
I mean, even if it's not exactly at the very least, you need to put in a limiter, right? So that you say, like, okay, it can't be more difference than 1 hybrid or so. If one team has 1 hybrid and the other has none, it's not ideal, but it's still kind of okay. Or if one has 2 and the other team has 1. But you don't need an exact mirror, I feel like, although it would be ideal. But they're never gonna do that because there aren't enough hybrids in the game just yet. And I mean, they're probably never gonna do it, let's be honest. But at least it needs a limiter, right? Because it can't be that one team has like 3 ships with planes and the other has none.
Yeah.
And the spotting is just so powerful. Like recently when I was playing the Tone, I just launched my planes and there was a destroyer. I was from German with not really anti-air. His smoke was down. I just circled above him and within a minute he was dead. I didn't do any damage myself. I didn't even try dropping. I just flew circles around him. And the poor guy, there was nothing he could do. He was trying to take a cap and, it's, it's the old like spotting problem that Wargaming for some reason is still unwilling to address. For reasons unknown, but,
But that's the thing. I mean, it's a harsh reality of where we are with World of Warships. It's a very big, we're at a Y junction. We're at a very big Y junction. You either carry on blindly and say everything is fine. It's the meme of everything is fine, and you're sat there in a burn. Everything's not fine. I don't get angry, okay, per se, when I'm going on about things. I don't burst into expletives and screamings and I deal in facts I don't do that. It's not who I am. It's not how I like to get my point across. I would rather say it's very simple. That way is not going to work because look at what people are saying. Forget your idea. Forget, oh, well, it's working, it's working, because look, we didn't have a big influence and all that. I'm really sorry. You're wrong because you're not, when you're dealing facts and data with this and with the wargaming spreadsheets, you take out the emotion. You can't take out emotion when you're dealing with this. All you're doing is saying, look, they're not enjoying it because either one team can see everything and suddenly, the steamrolls that everybody's saying, oh, there's loads of steamrolls. All you do is basically say, right, the team with the most hybrids wins. Because, like you said, they've got the vision, they've got the spotting. You can't hide. It's, it's not hard to see that it just needs some care and attention rather than putting a ship out straight after another one.
To be fair, I think the Tone has less influence at tier 8 than the Issei does at tier 6, but still, yeah. It's an issue.
And it's something you just need to think about. It's just... They just need to think about it. The sooner the better. But they don't. I mean, we've seen it time again. Everyone's seen the feedback. Feedback goes in, and I mean, you do have to, you question. I'm giving, we're giving you this feedback. We're telling you what the players are saying. We're providing all this. You're getting this all back. You're seeing it on the publications. Are we missing a translation from what it says to what you're thinking? It feels like it.
Yeah, it's also, and I mean, one on top of that is like really the Soviet carriers announcement, right? They went for Soviet carriers, not for like a more realistic line of carriers, even if they wanted new carriers. But there has been now so much feedback about we don't want more planes. You need to fix how carriers work. You need to fix how anti-air works and so on. And then they were like, well, we are going to do hybrids, then we're going to do Dutch cruisers with airstrikes, and here is the long-awaited Soviet carrier line that we've just, invented.
So, I'm going to, just a slight interjection there. They've not invented, they did actually exist. They were actually projects, okay? They're not the projects you would expect, but they did actually have real basis on real projects, because I hope my boss isn't listening to this. I apologize if he is. When that announcement went out, I actually made a slight decision to start digging and digging and digging a bit more and digging a bit more, and lo and behold, the Russian carriers do actually have assignable projects to them. So if you bear with me 1 second, I actually have the list, which is, where is it? Here you go. So the Tier 4, the what's it called? The Tier 4?
Komsomolets, I think.
Komsomolets, yeah. So Tier 4 is an actual idea based on a training ship conversion that they did consider. It was project. I haven't got where's the project number? So the next one, the Tier 6, was a conversion for the Svetlana, and it's project 66 to 68 AV. They're all available on a website called Military Intelligence, which has got a list of all the projects. There was then the Tier 8 is actually a refit of the Kronstadt hull. Again, the Kronstadt though was just a design, so they were coming up with these ideas and all that, and that's called Project 69 AV, which was interesting. And then Tier 10, and I'm crossing my fingers when I say this, and I'm sure everyone will understand when I say this. It was a refit of the Soviet Soyuz.
Okay.
So the Soviet Soyuz has got a pretty tough hull at the best of times. And now you're going to add an aircraft carrier top onto the top of that hull. So that's. But again, these are all actual projects that were designed and put forward to the Politburo as a what's going to happen. And then the Tier 8 Premium is actually one of Project 72, I think, which was another one. The one thing though that I think a lot of people actually said when you read it, they sound trash, because you've got a single flight of planes, granted, like Pointy said, quite a big flight of planes. The planes are slow, so you've got to physically put the carrier up front with the other ships so that you don't spend God knows how long getting the planes to actually go into the attack. They're going to have the skip bombs, which we've seen what the skip bombs can do from the Maximala. So if you want to test it, it's available for testing for 340,000 call. Congrats to everyone who paid that for the test phase of the skip bombs. It is. I mean, let's be brutally honest. It is.
Yeah.
But I mean, the one thing I look at it is that you're basically just going to click flight, and that's it. That's that flight gone. They have got quite. I think from what he said on the dev blog, they've got quite quick reloads. I'm not sure. There was something on there about the restoration time, wasn't there, on the dev blog?
They would have to, really.
I do have.
It's definitely. I
restoration
mean, this.
time.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go on, Pointy.
On.
Go on, Pointy. What were you saying? But
Just that there's. It's worth pointing out that this initial set of announced stats, there's almost no way that this is going to be what we end up with as is in the final line.
absolutely. Yeah. These are like, it's. Sorry, I should have prefaced this, shouldn't I? Everything that we're about to talk about is all work in progress and can and will be subject to change.
Yeah.
Not recorded that several times at all. If you want to see severe comedy, Flambass's video is hilarious, I'm afraid. Sorry for...
Oh, yeah. Balance approaching critical levels with their red alert soundtrack.
Yeah. Yeah, that was quite funny. But no, I mean...
Didn't they say, beginning at 8 planes equipped with rocket boosters? So basically, that's the planes are slow, but they're going to start with more speed than they actually have. I guess it all fits into you want the ships close. I mean, it's in more. I wouldn't mind that concept of carriers if carriers are forced to risk themselves a little bit to be more effective. And the one flight of plane thing is something that I really love because it means you can actually reduce the number of your strike. Right now, even if you have amazing anti-air, you usually they're getting one full strike in on you, right? You can be a Halland, you can be full anti-air spec, they come in, you do defensive fire, you reinforce the side, and they still get one full strike off because you only shoot down the planes that are the reserve. If it's only one strike, at least anti-air will finally limit the amount of damage the strike can do.
And of course, not that we're not to cast aspersions, but we're already testing the ISA and the tone.
Yeah.
Single flights with rocket assisted takeoff and.
It's concepts that obviously they have already put in there. Yeah. Now the question, of course, is. And that's for me the biggest concern is because so far Wargaming has balanced carriers always around the fact that they are always going to get a strike off because anti-air can't be strong enough to really counter planes. I mean, you can reduce the number of strikes, right? You can shoot down a squadron before maybe it gets its second strike off, but never before the first, right? So how are they going to balance these Russian carriers? Is there just so many planes that it's if you fly into the best anti-air in the world, you're still getting half of your planes off. And if you'd have no anti-air, then, well, good luck.
One thing, of course, we don't know from this dev blog is what the drop and dispersion patterns will be like for any of their because that does make a big difference. Yeah,
and I mean, obviously, the NDA that we're under for when we test them, we're not actually either. We're not. We can't actually go into that level of detail either once we start playing with them. And once we start testing these things, I mean, at the minute, I don't think we're even. I think it's the patch after next. Is it that we're due to get them for testing, or is it next patch? I don't even know when we're due to get these for testing. But they're under NDA, so we can't actually tell you what it's going to be like either when we get there. But yeah, like you said, it's going to make a big difference into are they going to apply what I'm going to loosely term the Russian formula to it? Because if you think about it, the Kremlin, the Russian battleships have a sweet spot of about 12 to 15, about 15 to 10 kilometers, where if you fire, it's pretty much there's the full stop where your shells are going to hit. Are they going to apply that kind of a formula? I would hope not. I'd rather them apply the Tone and the ISA formula to it, whereby it's there you go. But again, we don't know until we actually get our hands on it and try it and provide the feedback to them. But the biggest complaint I've seen from people is why didn't they bring the French line in first?
Mm-hmm.
Because the French carriers, people could put their hands on them. They were there. They weren't. It wasn't if you wanted to put a Russian carrier into the game, quite genuinely, there is one I think that you could put in as Grappa Zeppelin. because she was given to the USSR as reparations after World War II, and they used her as target practice. So if you wanted to put, they genuinely did. So if you wanted to put carrier in for the Russians, you've already got the model. You've already, she's already in the game. It's quite easy to find out what planes they were looking to use her to fly off, because I think it was a range of Chaikas and things like that. And there would be even less of a kickback, because hey, there's the proof, there's the paperwork where she was signed over from the Kriegsmarine to the North Pacific Fleet. Nobody can turn around and say, "Oh, you can't do that because," well, why not? Because it's genuinely there. It's great that, yes, the Russians had so many design projects that they wanted to do, but just didn't have the resources to do. You can see that in the number of projects that they had opening and closing all the time. Why not just...
It feels like with like the growing disconnect between like Wargaming and the player base. Like, it's not just that they add like planes after planes after planes. The more people complain about planes, the more plane-like things they add. But then even if they add something like a new carrier line, they go that step further, and instead of taking something that actually existed, that a history people could get behind, they just take like a more obscure thing, because it's almost feels like just we care so little about you that we just want to piss off everyone. The people that don't like carriers, the people that don't like planes, and every history nerd, and we just don't care.
I mean, I wonder how much of it is, well, we'd better do something for the, air quotes, home server, but what do you want to bet that they hate CVs on the RU server just as much as everywhere else? I mean, yeah, definitely that. I mean, it would make much more sense to have French, or even hell, like, I'm sure they could put together an Italian line, because the Italians did start making a carrier, the Aquila, and it just wasn't finished by the end of the war, or they kind of abandoned it, I think. But
again, it's that, even from a game balance perspective, all that kind of stuff that you have to throw in to think about it. Something like that, ask the guy, ask chat. Would they be bothered about the fact that, hey, this is a real Italian cruiser that is an Italian CV that they got 80% completed? Just, is that the right thing? Is that, there you go. It's something that 80% completed. Here's your Italian cruiser at tier 6. No. Yeah, okay. It's another aircraft carrier. But that's it. It's just it's another aircraft carrier. It's not. You don't annoy everybody at once. You just maybe annoy a couple of people.
Why just annoy a few if you can just go after everyone, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, in a way, it kind of feels like it was inevitable we were going to get Soviet CVs at some point, aside from all the joking. So it's sort of like they've ripped off the Band-Aid. And now the community reaction is kind of
question for everybody as well,
happening predictably.
Question for you guys as well, because I'm struggling to remember. Which nation was introduced first? France or the Russian? In terms of the tech tree in the game, was it the French line or was it the Russian line? My gut is telling me it was the French.
I think it might. I don't know. Was it the Russians? I've been feeling, because didn't we have French destroyers? Or no, it was French. I can't even remember. There's so many ships in the game at this point. We're gonna have to look this up.
I feel like it might have been Russian cruisers. I think Russian cruisers were pretty early. Weren't there like I mean, we had like Japanese and US, obviously. Or wasn't there then like Germans and then already Russians also?
Germans were
Russians might have
definitely-
been like the fourth nation or so that has been introduced. And it was in water says Russian cruisers were first.
So was it Russian cruisers? Wow.
Yeah, they have added. I remember that there was some blowback back then because people are like, "Why are you adding Russians when there are like I mean Russians were I think before the Brits, right? I think they had Russian cruisers in the game before there were British ships in it. And people were like,
it's well,
World War
British ship, I remember that
II,
much.
British ships. Isn't that sort of obvious?
So, French battleships on and around September 2018. It looks like, and then the cruisers. Oh no, cruisers were 2017. Yeah, French cruisers on the horizon, April the 12th, 2017. So yeah, they've been in since April 2017 for French cruisers. So Russian. Yeah, Russian cruisers 2016. Wow, they've been in the game that long. 5 years.
Yeah, they were one of the first lines, I think, after the initial ones.
Yeah, so the initial lines are America and Japan. Then it was Germany. Yeah, I think it was
Well, it
Germany.
depends I mean, Tirpitz was one of the early premiums, so if you count Tirpitz, then that's been in for a while.
The Warspite's been in for ages as well, hasn't she?
Yeah.
So, yeah, wow. Long time.
So I guess we should be happy that Russian CVs were not the first CV line introduced.
Yeah. Well, there we go. We've learned something. What's next on the topic list, or was anything? Or what
I
else?
think we're about done, and we've been going for like almost an hour and a half as well. So,
Oh yeah.
unless there's any particular, I mean, there's also Druid we could briefly mention. I think that's now been released in the Research Bureau section of the Armory, which, as was kind of mentioned last time, is an AP only British destroyer project with 2 forward turrets, and it's basically a mini Minotaur.
Have you heard any good feedback on it?
It seems to have been largely overlooked, to be honest. I mean, I've seen 1 or 2 videos. I know Irun did a video on it, and there doesn't seem to have been
because
outpouring of.
Yeah, because it's kind of been completely overshadowed by Vampire 2 by a mile. Because I mean, you've got the option: you can get the Druid, or you can get the Vampire 2. And I think, let's be be fair. It's got 2 turrets, and it's got no torpedoes, and it's I mean, I don't like. I mean, I'm sacrilege. It's sacrilege here for an Englishman to say this, okay? But I don't enjoy the Royal Navy higher tier destroyers. I don't like Darien. She's not comfortable with me. I've seen lots of people play really well in her, but I'm just not comfortable in them. Jutland, I don't mind for whatever reason. Jutland and Lightning down, I'm comfortable, but Darien I can't get on with, because I can't get on with Darien. Whenever I was out playing Vampire or on Druid, I couldn't get comfortable with them. So I just can't. I don't like them, and I can't get comfortable with them to like them. So yeah, opposite to a few people, but I just can't. I don't see the appeal. But Vampire 2, I can understand why she's like there. I mean, great speed boost, great range torpedoes, great crawling smoke that lasts for ages, with a hydro that matches it to go really well. It's a really, really strong ship. Good reload on the guns. It's great. Druid, I kind of just think is a bit.
It almost feels to me like it in that vein of the old school Khabarovsk before it was, made into what it is now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's definitely a sort of harassing ship. Like, you can use that AP very effectively against other destroyers, but you can equally, if you get a situation where you can be picking on a single battleship or a single slow-firing cruiser, there's no reason not to just run around in open water and just use the absurd rate of fire and the very good AP to melt them down.
True.
I mean,
But
druids...
it's definitely niche. It's very, very niche. It's got a lot of consumables, but the heal isn't anything special. And the lack of torpedoes, it's kind of like the Friesland. There are situations where you just have to kind of run away almost because you don't have that ability to do that damage quickly.
Yeah, it feels like it's more of a division ship, the Druid. Like, it's probably a good sidekick for another destroyer. So you have the other destroyer spot, and the Druid just stay a little bit behind, throw up a smoke if something is spotted, and then just quickly burn it down with its MOP.
Yeah.
It's a bit like, a small pocket Minotaur that you take with you into the camp that just like, you might be the Shimakaze, right? You do the spotting and that guy farms you, and you provide the torpedoes if some for your rushes and so on. But it's not really my kind of ship because I don't like destroyers without torpedoes. I do. Torpedoes there have to be good torpedoes if I want to play a destroyer.
So not the new German branch that just came out there with their 50-knot torpedoes.
And mobile sea mines.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's about it, really.
Yeah.
I don't think, unless there's anything else anyone wants to add at this juncture.
No, thank you very much for the invite, guys. It's been very kind of you. It's been really good fun.
Yeah, it's been nice having you.
Thank you.
And I mean, most of you probably know TCFreer, but you can find him on Twitch. You can also find him on YouTube. He also did way back a nice series where he interviewed a few contributors and even some wargaming people.
Yeah.
So that's also something to check out.
Yeah, definitely go check out his channel and his Twitch.
Thank you, guys. It's very kind of you.
And his Discord if you really like nerdy spreadsheets, statistics stuff.
Yeah, if you like spreadsheets, we have many for you. many spreadsheets. With more coming as well. The more. Sorry, it's a bit of a geek thing. I like to take out the argument of, oh, this is overpowered, and I agree that it is, and it's like, yeah, I'm really sorry. I don't bite. I prefer to create numbers and graphs and say, well, is it really? Really? But yeah, anyway, sorry, go on.
Yep. So thanks everyone for joining us tonight. And guess we're gonna raid someone then.
Bye. I can't see me waving, but I'm waving. Bye.
Imagine Pointy is currently waving at you.
Yes.
I can actually wave. So
there you go.
Bye.
We're waving for Pointy.